So in this presentation we are going to study if-else statements, and the only prerequisite is you should know data types and operators, which we have covered in the previous tutorial. And basically if-else statements introduces conditions in our program. So basically the main idea of if-else statements is to control which lines of codes should run or not based on some conditions. So uh, basically if you will see this table here, which is this one, if I will focus it, you will be able to see that the middle section of this whole table, you can see that this one is the middle section, and this middle section is basically known as the relational operators. So I'm going to write here relational operators, and basically these are the operators which are used to check some conditions. So relational operators, I'm going to mark it here that they are actually used to just evaluate some conditions. For example, let's take this second operator, which is not equal to operator. So what these relational operators does is they will just give values which is true or false based on the condition, and true is basically 1 and false is basically represented as 0. So let's suppose I want to say here that 10 not equal to 20. So if you introduced two variables in the front part and the back part of this operators on the two sides of the relational operators, they will evaluate they will just compare these two values, and then they will give you a value true or false. So we know that 10 is not equal to 20, so 10 not equal to 20 is actually true. What about if I will say 10 is equals to 20, which is the first operator? You can see I've written here equal to. So 10 equals to 20 is actually false. So this condition will give us false. So we're going to use these relational operators in the if-else statements, and basically when we will introduce them, you will be able to see how to actually use them in programs, and they are a very essential part of programming. So let's see the syntax, the basic syntax of the if-else statements. So the first thing you need to understand about if-else statement is the syntax, which is you will have to use the if keyword and I should be small. So if is basically a reserved keyword, so you cannot use it for some different purpose. Then you will have to introduce circular bracket here, and then inside the circular bracket you will have to write the condition, and then you will enclose the condition using another circular bracket. So this is the if part, and if you will see here, actually this whole thing is known as condition. So you will introduce the condition inside the if part. Now I want to explain you a very important concept, which is statements. What is the meaning of statements here? So statement is basically a line of code, a single line of code. Statement is a single line of code. So if I say that if I will consider any program, I can say that a single line of code, a single line is basically a statement, and statements are also known as the block of statements. So if you consider more than one line, you can actually group together some more lines of code using the curly brackets. So let's suppose you want to introduce some block of statements, like it will have some more lines in it, so you can use these curly braces. So these curly braces are used to create block of statements. So let's suppose I want to run these block of statements based on a condition. So if the condition is true, then only the program will execute this block of statements. So let's suppose you have a full program here. So let's suppose this is your program, your full C++ program, and in this program you have some lines of code. Let's suppose this is line 1, then 2, then 3, 4, 5, and so on. It can have as many as lines you want. So the program execution is basically the how you will run the program, and the program execution basically moves from the first line to the second line, and then it goes on till the last one. So the first line is executed first. So this is how the flow of control, this is known as flow of control. So you can see that the flow of this program execution will be like this, and you can actually control this flow using conditions. Using conditions, I can actually restrict this program to run line number 3, and I can do this using the if part. So what I will do is I will write the condition here, and then I will write the statement here. So I will write some statement here. Let's suppose this is statement 1, and if this condition is true, then only this statement will run. So if this condition will evaluate to false, I can run another statement. So let's suppose I want to run statement 2. So you can actually control the flow of program execution in a C++ program by introducing if else in if you want to restrict a particular line to execute. You can even restrict a block of statement which is multiple lines to execute by using circular brackets. So let's suppose I want to restrict lines 3 to 4, so I can use curly brackets here. So another form or another syntax of the if else will look like this: if condition, and then we will introduce some lines of code in here. So some statements will come here. So inside these curly braces, if you have multiple lines of code, you can write here. You can even write single line of code, it will even work here. And similarly you can do with the else part. In the else you can also introduce curly brackets, and you can implement as many statements as you want. So now let's implement this in our Visual Studio. So let me just edit this one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually do the comparison work. So let's suppose I will introduce a variable x, and I will say that the value of x is 10, and I will introduce another variable which is 20. Then I want to introduce, I will write here cout, and I will write here conditions. Now I want to write another line where I will say that value of x is lesser than y, like this. And in the next line I will write that value of x is not lesser than y. So now what I would do is, if I will run this program, it will display all of these lines. But you can see that I want to introduce a condition to restrict either this line is displayed or either this line is displayed, which is the line number 10 here, you can see here. So let's introduce conditions here, which is the if part. So we will use the if keyword, which is the reserved keyword, and so we are going to use the condition here. So x is less than equal to 20, sorry, y. And since there is only one single line which I want to restrict, I will not introduce the curly bracket, but it's better that you introduce curly braces because it makes your program more cleaner. So now you will also have to introduce the else part like this. So this program will run either this line or this line, and it depends on this condition inside the if part. So you can see that the value of x is 10 and the value of y is 20. So x less than equal to y, which is true. So this line will only run. This line will be ignored. So this is how you will use if else. So let's run this program and see its output. Similarly, you can also introduce if else inside if else. You can, and this is known as the nested if else. We will also see that part. So let's first see the output of this program. So you can see that it had display condition value of x is lesser than y, so it is not displaying us this line. This will not displayed. So this is how you can introduce. So if you want to introduce some more conditions inside it, you can even write if inside the else part. You can write it like this: if the condition, let's say x is equals to y. So then you can run this, and then you will have to introduce the else part of this if. So I will write here x is not equal to y, and here I will write value of x is equal to y. And here I will have to edit this. I will have to use only the less than sign, not equal to. So you can see how I have used to if. I have used if in the else part of the first if. So you will have to take care of the number of else and if you're using. So that in that way you can introduce conditions inside this program, and this whole introduction of if else statements is basically known as flow control, which is actually used to control the flow of the program. So in the next tutorial we are going to understand some more concepts, like we are going to understand for loops and while loops, which are also the iteration statements. This one is just condition based statements. We will introduce in the next tutorial for loops, which runs a particular block of statements or statements repeatedly, and this is also an important part of C++ programming. And we will also run some programs which will do some mathematical calculations using the for loop. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.